journalist and a filmmaker, but that's not really true. In reality, I am just like every other millennial, coasting through a mundane existence, looking for the next rush, one Instagram post at a time. And why is my present existence so mundane? Because as you heard, just under 5 years ago, I was a conflict journalist. What that meant was that I have been to dozens of armed camps, met so many underground leaders. I have given a job interview to the area commander of a drug cartel, hoping to find out how a cartel works. I have snuck across an international border to meet a militant leader, only to find out that the man who was guiding me there was smuggling diamonds. And my favorite experience has to be when I went to the drug fields to meet the cultivators. 10 seconds after shaking hands with him, I asked him for a bar of soap and a mug because I had the worst case of diarrhea ever. So yeah, sitting here in Delhi, sitting on an edit just doesn't compare to sitting and squatting on a village toilet. But what these things did teach me, beyond giving me funny stories to tell, was that they made me acutely aware of my situation, being an outsider, being given access to people who are perceived as the other, and allowed me to understand without baggage and bias how the other is created. Before I get into that, let me just give you a bit of a backstory. I was born into a military family. I did grow up playing hide and seek in tank garages. All my life as a kid, I would play out these scenarios of conflict where I was the hero. I was fighting these imaginary wars with imaginary guns, fighting really very real guns. I got to interact with soldiers. I got to understand why they were fighting, why they were willing to die. And I had a very, very strong idea of what is India. An idea I had to question. Several years later, when I found myself the son of a serving army officer, sitting in an underground camp talking to General Funting Shimre, the commander-in-chief of the NSCNIM, one of the most feared militant groups in the Northeast. He was the first underground leader I met, and I will never forget that conversation. We were sort of sipping tea in this thatched hut, and he turned to me and he asked, "Where are you from?" Now obviously I couldn't tell him I'm from Delhi, because then I'd have to tell him I live with my parents, and I'd have to tell him that my father is a serving army officer, and him and his friends are right now actively working to catch you and your friends. So I sort of had to make things up, and I decided to kind of stick to the truth, so I discussed my pre-partition roots. I told him how I'm part Kashmiri, an idea he really liked in other struggling people. I told him how my other grandparents were from Dera Ismail Khan, Abdabad, and Lahore. And before I could continue, he cut me off and said, "Mr. Langer, that's why we fight." I didn't know what to say. And he went on to say, "See, you're a man without a home. Your ancestors never fought for their home, so you are homeless. We Nagas don't want that, therefore we're fighting today." And in that moment, my enemy sort of left me speechless. And again, he reminded me of the fact that I needed to approach this as a total outsider with no baggage. But I have always been acutely aware of the fact that I don't have a home. And I think the toughest question I've had to answer is when I was in the Hindu college hostel talking to my basketball team, who was trying to make sense of my vague name, and they asked me, "Tum kya ho? What are you?" And I did not know how to answer that. Because my first name, Avalok, is Buddhist. I'm not Buddhist. My second name, Langer, is Kashmiri. I'm not Kashmiri. I was born in Wellington in Tamil Nadu. I'm not Tamil. I have spent close to 2 decades living in Delhi, and I definitely don't want anyone to call me a Delhi boy. I might drive like one, but no, that's not happening. So, I mean, worst case scenario, I'm really confused about who I am. Best case, I'm an Indian. But that's not the answer they wanted. And had I gone on to explain to them that, look, I'm a Homo sapien with a complex set of interrelated thoughts and emotions, which have been developed over a period of time based on my experiences and my education, and I just happened to be born in Delhi. I think they just looked at me blindly and been like, "Dude, what the are you talking about?" What they wanted was a really, really simple answer. They wanted me to tell them that I'm a Bengali, I'm a Bihari, I'm a Jat, I'm from the Northeast, some community, some tag that would allow them to slot me into the pre-existing superstructure, community-based superstructure of Delhi University. And based on that tag, in that moment, what they would be able to do is figure out whether I'm an ally and I'm going to be best friends for life, or if I'm the enemy and I'm the other and I need to be kept away. Because I came to realize that in India, being Indian is never enough. And I'm sure for a lot of you here, and for many people in India, we define our identity based on these tags. We look to belong, and how we look to belong is we want to fit in this superstructure, and we want to be part of a community because it gives us a sense of security, it gives us a sense of approval, of shared success. And that's what Delhi University was about, but it was like on speed. So what ended up happening was that you had these communities which were divided. You had leaders for each of those communities, and whatever the leaders decided, everyone followed suit. And when it came to politics, whether it was the money, whether it was decision, whether it was fights, everything was along these communal lines. And the whole thing was that it reached a stage where even where you stayed in the hostel, which table you ate on, was on these communal lines. When we entered in first year, we were all freshers together. But by third year, we'd all divided into these groups, and we started to see each other as us and them. And that for me really broke down how all this functions. And as a reporter, I came to understand that this plays out even at a larger national and regional level. Politicians are actively looking for divisions in society which they can play on. They will choose a group, make it their group, help that group find the other, and push away the other. Now, why do they do it? Because it's easier to win elections this way. It makes it so much easier when you can create a fear of the other. And I've seen this as a journalist in the Northeast. You continuously tell your community that the other is encroaching on your rights, and you create this fear that our jobs are going to go away, our land is going to go away. You know, our culture is eroding, and the other is all to blame for that. And when you're so scared of the other, what do you end up doing? You turn to your leader. And you not only turn to your leader as a representative of your thoughts, but you make them not only a representative, but a protector of your larger identity. And what ends up happening? You forget about roads. You forget about education. You forget about infrastructure. You forget about anything which has to do with things that you should be holding politicians accountable for. And politicians keep winning elections. If we had millions and millions of people, and politicians had to deal with these millions of individual free-thinking people who were free of this communal one-upmanship, elections would be totally different. It'd be so much harder to win. The conversation would be totally different, and we could hold them accountable. And for the longest time, I thought, a good education, going to a good school can do that, and it can change your worldview. But again, life gave me a reality check. Straight out of college, when I was a video producer in NDTV. At that point in time, my girlfriend was from Nagaland, and I'd taken her for a South Delhi party. And I decided to make her meet my school friends. I mean, these are the people I grew up with. We went to the same school, we were neighbors, they've traveled the world. And I remember overhearing the first conversation that they had when my best friend found out that she's from Nagaland and that she works in NDTV. His first question was, "Oh, so do you need a work visa to be here?" And I was like, "What? I mean, Nagaland is part of India, Delhi, you don't need a work visa." And he was so embarrassed. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was actually confusing Nagaland with Arunachal." And for me, that moment sort of explains exactly how India looks at the Northeast. They just don't get it. And I've made fun of him for years. I've written about it in my book, so it's going to be there forever. But he said something which really stuck with me. He said, "Look, we studied the map of India. We looked at the states, we learned the state capitals. What else did anyone teach us about the Northeast?" And he was right. And I went back to our syllabus in school, and I started seeing where could the Northeast fit in. We all studied about the Mughals. We studied class 7 onwards, repeatedly we taught about the Mughals. Not once did I learn about the Ahom kingdom and how the Mughals weren't able to defeat the Ahom despite, 17 attempts. They lost 17 wars to the Ahoms. We never learned about that. We learned about World War II, class 10, class 12, even in college. But not once did we learn about the Battle of Tennis Court, which happened in Kohima. It was a pivotal battle which changed the eastern front of the war. We never studied about it. Now, what these things could have done, other than save my friend from looking stupid at the party, they could have created a shared narrative. When you bring in thoughts which are from fringes, and you bring them into your own history, you create a shared story, a shared narrative, a starting point for a conversation, and you can bring the other in. But that doesn't happen. Instead, what ends up happening is leaders in the Northeast tell their youth that India doesn't want you, they treat you as different, they don't see you the same way. The students and professionals come here to study and to work, and what do they face? People like my friend, they face discrimination, they face violent discrimination, they face racism, and it reinstates the fact that, look, you're different, you're other, you don't belong. Now, I know what you guys have been thinking. I think it's been about almost 8 minutes. I've been giving a non-stop lecture. I'm getting a bit preachy. I've told you that our education system sucks. I have told you that our politicians suck. Some of you might agree. And I've told you our thinking sucks. But I'm not free from any of this. As a part of society, this thought process is so ingrained in the way we learn and the way we think that it's very important to unlearn. Now, let me give you an example. I was introduced to the idea of same-sex couples at a very, very early age. And that's largely because when I was in class 3, my father was posted to New York. So from class 3 to 6, we stayed in New York. And though it was 3 years and a very early time in my life, it totally changed the way I looked at the world. You have to understand, 1996, in India, I mean, you had just Doordarshan and Sunday morning cartoons. And it was 5 of us on a scooter, my mom, my dad, my sister, me, and this huge German Shepherd. And one flight sort of took us to high-rise buildings, 24-hour cable TV, and my friend Brian. Now, my friend Brian, we overlapped for only a year in class 3. He was a really nice guy. And at his farewell, I noticed something sort of strange about him. He had 2 mothers. And in class 3, I just, broached the subject of reproduction, and I couldn't understand. I mean, that's how babies are made, but 2 mothers, how does it really work? It was all quite confusing. And then over a period of time in New York, I started noticing a lot of these same-sex couples, and it just wasn't overlapping with what I'd learned on reproduction. I was like, this doesn't make sense. So I obviously went to the authority figure in my life, my mother, and I asked her, what's going on? Look, I need someone to explain this to me. And my mom said, it's totally normal. Different people are different, they're born that way, and you gotta accept that. And that was my stance in class 6 on homosexuality. That is normal. In 1998, we fly back to Delhi and the world changes. Abey chakke, dude, don't be gay. That's what my friends were saying. That's what my peer group was using to degrade one another. And now I just come into a new school. I wanted to fit in, and I just jumped on that bandwagon. And for years, this is how we spoke. And none of us thought there was anything wrong with it. Because in my head, I'm still thinking, dude, you're not homophobic. You're that same guy with Brian's, your friend, 2 mothers, gay rights. But my actions were homophobic. And my friends and I, we were actively identifying, persecuting, alienating, and pushing away people. I never realized there was a problem until 10 years went by, and I went to Nepal to meet and interview the first openly gay member of parliament in South Asia, Sunil Babu. And during our conversation, he started explaining things to me and talking about the discrimination he had faced in society and how the terms used and the words used were so important. And suddenly I saw an overlap in what he was talking about and describing as discrimination and what my friends and I have been doing for about 10 years. And then I realized it's really important for us to unlearn and rethink. Because today, the way we approach, for a lot of us, the way we approach friends or the way we approach making communities and groups is based on the idea of cutting someone out. The fundamental thought is that you and I are the same because us and them are not. So you and I need to be friends. The unity is based on cutting someone out. And as a reporter, I came to realize a lot of this, as I said, because of politicians, is a fabricated superstructure, which is built to keep us thinking like this. And why I say that is because of the second underground leader that I met, who is General Tinusri Keho of the NNC. He's a man who in the 60s took a group of 60 Nagas by foot from Nagaland across Myanmar into China for military training to fight the Indian army. Now when I met him, there was something so familiar about him. The way he sat and spoke, his body language. He had this swagger, this charm. And his tone was this mix of warmth and sternness that reminded me exactly of my grandfather. And now my grandfather is was a lieutenant general in the Indian Army. In the 60s, both these officers were on opposing sides of the battle. In the 60s, both these men would have seen each other as an enemy. They would have seen each other as the other. But in that moment, I couldn't get past the fact that they were so similar. I couldn't get past the fact that if you were to remove the context, these 2 men could have been friends. And that got me thinking that we need to change the way we think. And if we can change the way we define ourselves. If I am no longer defined by my name, by where I'm born, my religion, my community, sure, these things influence me, but they don't define me. If I can get past the fact that I am no longer the sum total of my accumulated heritage and redefine myself, and I can just be a Homo sapien with a complex set of interrelated thoughts and emotions based upon my upbringing and my education, and you can just be a Homo sapien with a complex set of emotions and thoughts based on your upbringing and your exposure, and then you and I can sit face to face just as people, without the baggage. And we can have a system which enables education that brings the fringes into the mainstream narrative, which teaches us to unlearn, because what's normal today might not be normal 10 years from now. We need to question that. We need to question the facts and truths that we have had passed down for generations. I know it's really hard what I'm saying, but if we can possibly do that, then we can preserve diversity and still aspire to have unity. Thank you.